Hello again, and thanks for joining us today on Care Connections, a 4-part podcast series where we have real talk on rare conditions. Sanofi Genzyme has been committed to supporting the rare disease community for over 35 years. I'm your host, Abby, part of our patient education liaison team at Sanofi Genzyme, and welcome to our 3rd episode. Today, we'll be joined again by Tony, who has been diagnosed with a chronic medical condition. For episode 3, I'm also delighted to welcome Dr. Kishnani, a medical expert in this field. The patient-provider relationship when living with a rare medical condition is very important, and that's what we'll be talking about today. So to level set a bit, Tony, can you briefly tell us again about your diagnosis, what the condition is, when you were officially diagnosed, and how long you've been living with it?
Yes. I originally saw a physician when I started having trouble going upstairs without a handle and standing up on my own in about 2007. I went to a specialist who then told me I had limb-girdle muscular dystrophy. That was late 2008. I had that diagnosis until 2018, January, when I was told that I actually have Pompe disease. And I have been working to manage that and live with that since then.
Wow, so quite a long time with the incorrect diagnosis. Okay, so Dr. Kishnani, welcome. Can you share your background in this field and how long you've been treating patients who have lysosomal storage disorders?
My training has been as a pediatrician, and then my subspecialization is in clinical and biochemical genetics. I've been at an academic institution for the past 29 years, and as a focus there, lysosomal storage diseases and glycogen storage disorders, but other inborn errors of metabolism have also been my clinical and research interests.
Wonderful. And thank you for bringing so much of your expertise and years of experience to this to share with us. So after diagnosis, Tony, what was the process for assembling your care team?
Well, I was led through it, essentially. I was introduced to Dr. Kishnani and then a dietitian, a physical therapist. The whole team came together and it felt like they kind of surrounded me in a good way. The healthcare team was able to see me in one day, so I was able to go from provider to provider, specialist to specialist, and it was a lot easier to do that than to go to one on one day, one on another day, and try to retain that information. I was able to get assessments on everything in one day, get feedback on everything in one day, which at times could be kind of confusing, but also was very helpful. So the team kind of assembled around me instead of me having to go out and find the team, which was a relief.
Sounds like it could be an incredible source of support in medical knowledge. Mm-hmm. So who is on your care team? Can you list for us the different types of providers that you may see?
Yes, I have a geneticist, a PA, a pulmonologist, a speech therapist, a physical therapist, and a psychologist, and also a dietitian.
Wow. So you have a lot of people who are supporting you and helping you with this management.
Yes, I have a big team.
That's wonderful. What questions, if you can remember, did you ask your care team when you first started to manage your condition, and maybe some of the expectations that you had from them during this time?
One question was activity level. That's always been something that I've struggled to manage. What is a healthy activity level? What are the signs that I'm overdoing it or underdoing it? Also, what does the path ahead look like? I understand in hindsight is not an easy question to answer because it's different for everyone. But of course, I was naturally curious what's going to happen. And then diet. What do I eat? What don't I eat? How much do I eat? How often do I eat? So that was a big question of mine. How can I manage this and do what I can do, what I have control over? And that was really the focus of my questions.
Absolutely. And when we think about those, a lot of those are similar to things that a person would need even without a rare disease.
Right.
So when you get ready to meet with your care team and all these different specialists, is there anything you do to prepare for those appointments?
Any questions that we've had leading up to the appointment are already written down. Any issues we've had along the way. And then on the drive up, we kind of talk about it and kind of, do we have any questions? Do we have any concerns? That kind of thing. It's preparation the whole time between visits because different stuff is always coming up. It is really roulette when you wake up. So you experience different things and you want to know, why am I experiencing this? So those kind of things we try to bring up and we try to ask, why is this happening? What could I do to prevent this? Or what can I do to promote this? Or, healthy activity, stuff like that. Those are the things that we guess on a lot, but would love to hear a physician speak to, or a physical therapist speak to, or a dietitian speak to. So we take that opportunity to try to get those questions answered.
That's great. So making sure that you're being cognizant of them and maximizing the time that you have with them to get those questions answered. What advice or tips would you give to other patients who are navigating those relationships with those specialists?
Be honest and be open to constructive criticism. Be open to advice and really tell the truth. Do not go in trying to not seem like you've made a mistake, because we all make mistakes. Don't try to paint a picture that doesn't exist. Just be honest and you will get honest feedback, and apply that feedback. And then when you go back, you can show how that feedback helped or didn't help and maybe get different feedback. Really, it's just honesty and open-mindedness. You have to go in open-minded because you're going to hear some stuff you don't want to hear.
I think that can be very helpful for some individuals, because it sounds like sometimes you might not want to let the physician down, or you may seem like you want to present a certain image of yourself, but then you might not receive the best information or be able to utilize that in the most efficient manner.
Absolutely.
I think that's really, really good advice, right? Because we're often scared of being judged.
Absolutely, we are. And like you said, letting the physician down and getting that look of, oh, you're not doing this. Well, you might deserve that look. So take the look and learn from it.
Well, I think that's a perfect time to ask Dr. Kishnani for her input and her perspective as a healthcare provider, and maybe about how it's different to manage a patient who has a rare disease versus other chronic diseases, and how you may address the needs differently of an individual with a rare disorder.
Right. So when we think about someone with a rare disorder, they're often called orphan diseases or ultra-orphan diseases. And the definition, as we know, is no more than 200,000 of a particular condition, but sometimes it can be as few as a handful of individuals with that particular rare condition. The point I'm trying to make here is that being in this field of rare diseases is an opportunity for us as care providers to learn from our patients, to recognize that this is a partnership. Every patient, the rare disease diagnosis is teaching us something. And so we go in with that kind of understanding and relationship. It's really critical to hear the patients out really well, because I can tell you in my career, I have learned a lot just by being a good listener. And you've got to learn to be patient. You've got to learn to be very respectful. Of course, all of us need to be respectful, but a rare disease really is so different than, say, managing someone with diabetes or hypertension, where there's many patients. It's not one particular cause that results in that particular situation of, say, hypertension or diabetes. Here we have an opportunity because we've got an underlying genetic cause leading to that situation. But then there's also the environment, the role of diet, other genetic factors. And when you count such few patients, we've definitely got to keep this in mind, that listening carefully can be transformative for that particular individual. So every patient, it's like personalized medicine in this setting in its utmost sense.
What would you recommend to patients or their family members or caregivers who are assembling their own care team?
I think the one advice I would give is that assembling a team that the patient and the family is comfortable with is very important, because that care team is going to be carrying that relationship for a long period of time. I think the other factor to recognize is that when assembling it, I think allowing even the patient to understand that in a rare disease scenario, everyone cannot be an expert. And so partnering with a tertiary care facility or a team that knows that particular condition or diagnosis, with the care team that's closer to the family, is really important. The reason I say this is that we've got to allow our families to be comfortable that the primary team that's taking care of them, which might be a long distance away from a center of excellence, that team really needs to be given that confidence and be knowledgeable about that situation, so that the relationship between the tertiary care facility, the primary care physician, and the family is really maintained. It's really a partnership which goes multiple ways. And so you can have a team that serves as the expert team, but then you also need that immediate team that's available to the patient immediately as well. And so I think setting up expectations in an honest way with your patient is really important for them to recognize that it's all a partnership. No one's a true expert. And so working it out together makes all the difference.
I think that's incredible feedback. And like you said, it's a partnership and it kind of becomes this family in a way to merge that and figure out where everyone's roles kind of fit in.
Yes, and what I would also say is that the more you engage the primary care physician and other care team members that are more local to that particular patient, I've actually found it a very enjoyable relationship because they often reach back out to you with the next patient that they may have, as long as that communication is left open and one where we're all stakeholders in this, rather than for a primary care physician to feel threatened or to feel inadequate, because that's really not what we're ever trying to do. What we're trying to do is work collaboratively together, because at the end of the day, anyone who's in the healthcare profession wants the best for the patient. And so it's upon us as well to work collaboratively with our counterparts who are knowledgeable in other domains, but maybe not necessarily in that specific condition or situation with a particular patient.
It seems like it can be a very positive experience.
Yes, and I'm going to add a little bit more as well. As I established our team at our institution, the one important aspect to realize is every team member is an equal stakeholder. It's not about an MD versus other care providers. Everyone is integral to the success. And taking a team approach, I think, has been one of the biggest reasons for success and what I believe has been very good patient experiences when they've come to our institution.
That's so helpful, and I hope that other patients who are listening can benefit from this. So, in your opinion, why is it important for patients and healthcare providers to have an open and honest relationship?
I think the start of any relationship has to be based on an open communication, and even more important than an open communication is one of trust. And I think for a patient to have trust in a care team, it's upon us as the care team to be able to allow that patient to know that they can trust us. And so an honest conversation discussing the good as well as the not so good with a family is essential. I think it's also how you give that information to a patient. I can just speak to how we try and handle it. I always try and be encouraging of what a patient has accomplished, but then a reminder of what has not been accomplished and a goal of where I would like them to be, and then providing an explanation for each of those scenarios. So to me, this is something that our team does in every aspect of care. Trying to establish that early is very important. And also for a patient or a family to know that whatever is being planned or discussed is really keeping the patient at the epicenter of whatever is happening. And thus, again, taking an individual approach for every patient or every family. So as an example, in the case of, say, Tony, I've got to account for the fact that he's got a beautiful family, he's got young children, and he wants to do certain things. And so we're going to try and adapt to ensure that he's enjoying a quality of life and we're not over-medicalizing. Not that we try and do it, but we tailor it to the individual patient needs. Trying for the patient to understand that, I think, is really important, because I think that allows patients to open up and tell us what their limitations are or what their challenges are, and then we can provide advice and suggestions for them based on what they can and cannot accomplish. So this has really been a way that we have tried to incorporate it in our approach.
Tony, I see you're shaking your head. Do you want to add something?
I can say that the trust is crucial. Dr. Kishnani is the only person that I've ever listened to that has said, do not hold your son. Do not carry him. Do not lean over the crib. It's not good for you. And I listened. If any other person on this planet told me that, I'd say, nope, I'm going to hold my son. When Dr. Kishnani said that, she said why. She explained what would happen and if I did continue to do that, and what would happen if I didn't. And I trusted her implicitly. If that trust wasn't there and was not established and proven, I would not take that direction. I would not take that. as something that I needed to do. So because I knew that I was speaking to someone that has shown that they cared from the beginning and has looked my wife in the eye and has looked me in the eye and has seen my children and said, don't do that, it's not good, I did not do that anymore. And Dr. Kishnani was right, because my pain decreased a lot and a lot of things changed when I let go of that control, and Audrey let go of that control and said, we need to do this a different way. That's not working. Without the trust, it's just another person saying, don't do that. It's crucial. It's paramount to the treatment plan that you trust your whole team.
For me as a physician, when you hear this, this is why we do what we do. We can help our families out.
That's incredible. One final question. Is there anything that you would recommend, Dr. Kishnani, to patients to ensure that they get the most from those doctor visits that they have?
A few pointers here. I think, just as Tony said, very often a patient is a self-advocate. And I would encourage patients to be self-advocates, especially in a rare disease space. It sometimes takes a patient taking that first visit or a visit to a center that has experience with that particular condition. There's a learning, there's an understanding, and then taking that information back to a local team. So that's one part, is that a patient and the family often is at the center of driving the next steps for that particular family in that situation. The second is for a patient also to know that this is a partnership between themselves, other patients with the rare disease, that particular rare disease, and a center or centers that are working on that rare disease. It's a lot of give and take. Patients have to also realize that on occasion, it could be that we as researchers or as clinicians may be asking a certain thing of a patient that they may not want to do or participate in. For instance, a blood draw for a biobank, or participating in a certain treatment aspect for a new therapy in development. I think it's very important for us as providers to ensure that we reassure our patients. Their treatment, their care comes over and above anything else that is asked of them. And also for a patient to have that confidence that if they did not participate in something, it was not ever going to jeopardize the care that they're going to receive. So once again, it's very different in a rare disease space where that transparency and that honesty and that respect on both sides has to be established. And so for patients, the first journey is to identify experts for that particular rare disease, try and go back to their local team. And then second is, of course, also trying to learn what's new and what's next. And so being a self-advocate becomes very much more important in a rare disease space than I would say in any other space.
Thank you both, Tony and Dr. Kishnani. This has been really incredible, and I feel so lucky to have had this conversation with you and for you both to share your thoughts and recommendations on a successful patient-provider relationship. So, on our next and final episode, we'll be joined again by Tony and his wife Audrey, where we'll be focusing on looking to the future and how to continue to live with a rare disease. Thank you both. Remember, whether your needs are large or small, your CareConnect PSS team is here to provide the support you need. To learn more about the range of support offerings and to contact your CareConnect PSS team, call 800-745-4447, option 3, or visit www.careconnectpss.com. Be sure to tune into our next episode.